Hello guys, this is my first video on YouTube, and basically I'm going to be doing videos about news stories, headlines, anything that really catches my eye, so to speak. Um, my name is Justin Mangun, and you need to subscribe to my channel and watch my videos. And today I'm talking about an article that was on CNBC.com, which I'm going to post a link to, so if anybody wants to go on and read the article for themselves, they can. And what the article said was that the dollar is losing its status as a reserve currency. The people are basically dumping the dollar. It's not being used as much in the world currency supply. But that's a trend that's been happening. That's not the new. It's just, I guess it's someone new that CNBC is covering it, which is a little bit of a surprise to me. Because you don't get much real information from the news media. But basically what it argued was that, this is an exact quote, is that the US dollar has drifted to a 15-year low, and that the US dollar is shrinking as a percentage of the world's currency supply, and basically that this might be the beginning of the dollar pretty much collapsing, or at least losing its status as a reserve currency. But you got to ask, why is it losing its status as a reserve currency? The simple reason is because of debt, and because of devaluation, and because of, well, low interest rates certainly ain't helping. And the more debt we rack up and the bigger the deficits, which for 4 years straight have been over $1 trillion. I mean, Bush had deficits of, I think maximum was like 500 billion, and this president's had deficits for just about almost $1.5 trillion a year. I mean, that's insane. You couldn't run a business like that. You can't run a government like that. But the Federal Reserve is printing money because at this point that's all they could do. If the Federal Reserve stopped printing money, if we stopped running a deficit, we would have an economic crash. The stock market would go down. Why do you think the stock market is at 14,000? Nobody, that has to go and buy groceries is feeling that. That ain't better in anybody's life. How many people out there, feeling any better because the stock market is at 14,000? Obviously not. But the stock market is that high because of the Federal Reserve. It's artificial. It's overvalued. And basically, once the Fed stops printing money, the stock market's going to come down. I mean, we don't have a recovery because we don't have an engine for economic growth. We don't manufacture. That's part of the reason why they're devaluing the currency, though, is to basically double our exports. But by doing that, you kill the average person. It doesn't affect Wall Street, because if you're a multimillionaire or a multi-billionaire, you have tons of money. I mean, you could buy gold. Basically, gold is an insurance policy. But if you're the average person, you don't have that type of money to buy gold, so you have to live with inflation. And inflation is really a hidden tax. And this article is eye-opening, if you ask me, because it's basically what not everybody, but a lot of people have been talking about for a long time. We're losing our status as a reserve currency. Countries are not using the dollar. There's trade deals going up around the world. China and Japan. China's the second largest economy in the world. Japan's the third largest economy in the world. And they've cut out the dollar. They're gonna trade with each other, but they're not gonna use the dollar. Iran is gonna use gold to buy oil instead of dollar. Part of that is because of the sanctions we put on them. But that's just a tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's multiple trade deals that are popping up, and almost all of them are not using the dollar because countries that hold dollars in reserves are losing money, and the Chinese know that, and that's why they're hoarding gold like there's no tomorrow. And some people say that they might have 2,000 tons of gold. I mean, if they had 4,000 tons of gold, they could kill the dollar with 4,000 tons of gold. So the world knows what's coming. Countries are waking up. People are waking up. And, there was an article, I think, that said that people bought more Silver Eagles last month than at any month in American history. And that's really incredible. So that tells you that people are starting to wake up to what's coming. And, people are concerned. You look at polls. For the first time ever, most Americans say their kids' future will not be as bright as theirs. That's a first. I mean, people are pessimistic. We don't feel like anything's getting better, but we keep being told, well, the economy's moving in the right direction. The economy's moving. No, it ain't. The economy's, anemic. We don't even have 2% GDP growth. I mean, that's not economic growth. To have real economic growth, you need around 3 to 4%, I think. And we're not even halfway there right now. So we don't have economic growth, and we're not going to have economic growth. And the Fed, they're playing a game, and what they're doing is they're keeping interest rates low, and they're printing trillions of dollars a year. That now they're going to print $86 billion a month. And according to Ben Bernanke, he's going to do this until unemployment is below, I think, 6%. If you look at the estimates, we're not due to have unemployment below 6% for at least like 8 more years. I mean, that's insane. I mean, that's going to devalue the currency. I mean, what do you expect? Money, they say supply and demand. Well, supply and demand also applies to currency. And the fact is, there's less and less demand for the dollar because there's too much supply for the dollar. People are, they're dumping the dollar. I'm going to have charts soon because I got a printer coming out, so I'll be able to show you guys more than, so I can show you visibly what's going on. But basically, I think that, this year, I think we might see a collapse. I think we are going to begin to see signs of it because the Fed can't control interest rates forever. Interest rates are already starting to go up somewhat, not by a lot, but they're starting to creep up, which, if you ask me, means that there's going to be more QE on the way. They're probably going to print more money to try to suppress those interest rates. But basically, they know what's going on. They know that they can't get out of the hole because to get out of the hole, they have to sink the economy. They don't want to do that. So they're going to keep printing money. They're going to keep printing money to finance the deficit, and we're now monetizing our debt, basically until there's nothing left. And when interest rates spike up, you're going to see the beginning of the crisis. And people need to buy silver. People, obviously gold somewhat harder to buy because it costs a lot more. But if you have the money for silver, buy silver, Stock up on food if you could. I mean, make preparations. 5 years ago, this would have been a maybe. Today, it's pretty much a guarantee. I mean, if you do the numbers, it's a mathematical guarantee that we're going to default on the debt because you can't service the debt. I mean, if interest rates weren't this low, we would have already defaulted. How are you going to pay back $17 trillion? And we're on pace by the end of this term to be over $20 trillion in debt. And I think 10 years from now, we're on pace to be close to $30 trillion in debt. Our debt is actually bigger than Europe's. I think that surprises a lot of people, but our debt's actually bigger than Europe. And look at where Europe is. So how long do you think we got till we get where Europe is? We don't got that long. So, and something else I wanted to talk about was Paul Krugman, who won a Nobel Prize for economics, basically said, well, we don't have to worry about the debt. At least not right now. We'll worry about the debt in about 10 years, around 2020. We don't have to worry about the debt until basically entitlements start to melt down, which is completely irresponsible because then if you wait to that point, you can't control it. I mean, that's just insane. Why would you want to wait till you get to the point to where you're really... he's talking about basically not worrying about the debt until programs start to just basically melt down. I mean, until they have no choice but to worry about the debt, which is insane. But this guy won a Nobel Prize for economics. I mean, and it's dangerous when people like him go on the news and say these things because most average people, tend to listen to people that are more educated. And I think it's dangerous, and that surprised me. You don't worry about it then. But see, that's what's going on because they know they can't get out of it. That's why that's why 30,000 drones are going to fly over America soon. That's why you're hearing about cyber security, executive orders. That's why President Obama signed like 4 executive orders in one day. Basically making it illegal for him to declare martial law at any point. That's not a coincidence. He wouldn't be devoting time to do that unless they knew or felt as if something was coming. And everybody knows that something's coming. They know it, but they're not telling you. Well, why are they not telling you? A lot of people say, well, I'm not going to believe them because I'm not going to believe people because the government will tell me that. No, they wouldn't. Why would they tell you that? If they told you that, you'd go out and riot. You would panic. Of course they're not going to tell you that. They're going to let it get to that point for you to learn that. Now, There are a lot of people say, well, we could get out of this debt crisis. How? You'd have to, first off, stop running a deficit, which is right now, I mean, you're talking about massive cuts to even do that. And then you'd have to be running a surplus to pay the debt back, or at least begin to pay it back. I mean, how are you going to run a surplus? You'd have to cut almost $2 trillion to run a surplus. So they're not, there's no way out of it. And, I think people should check out that article, and I'm going to be posting up a link to it, but I think that, it's sad because I don't know how bad it's going to be. I think it's going to get bad, and I think that the government knows that. And they're trying to basically dumb people down. But you can't mathematically sustain a debt of 17 trillion plus. I mean, if the federal government was to confiscate every cent that everybody earns in this country, we would still be over $1 trillion in debt. And that's incredible. So I mean, what are you gonna do? But you have to get prepared. You have to buy gold. I mean, well, not gold, but silver. You have to stock up on food, waters. I mean, you have to make preparations because something's coming, and it's going to be a big event. It's going to be the biggest economic collapse in the history of the world. And it's not just going to be felt here in America because the dollar is a world reserve status. That means banks around the world, central banks around the world, like the Chinese, hold dollars. But the Chinese are slowly, basically, releasing their holdings. They don't want to hold dollars because it's being worth nothing. It's being devalued. That's why they're hoarding gold. That's why they're hoarding rice. And I think I saw an article saying that they've quadrupled their rice supply. Why would you quadruple your rice supply unless you felt something was coming? So clearly there's something coming. And I don't know how long ago it was. It might have been like 2-3 years ago, but the president, premier of China, whatever he's called, basically the president, said that the days of the dollar being a reserve currency are coming to an end. I mean, what does that tell you? The days of the dollar being a reserve currency of the world is coming to an end, and it is. 15-year low. And that's going to continue because guess what? 5 years from now, we're going to be probably $21-22 trillion in debt. What do you think? I mean, what do you think that's going to do to the dollar? You can't pay this debt back, and they're just going to continue to print money because they're prolonging it. But by prolonging it, you're digging a deeper hole, and you're going to make the crisis worse. I mean, but there's no way out of this because if the economy was to pick up, like some people are saying it might, which if the EPA would get out of the way, we could actually have a real recovery. Because there could be an oil boom in this country. And a natural gas boom in this country. If the EPA would get out of the way. But the EPA is not going to. So I don't see that happening. But even if that did happen, when the economy improves, interest rates go up. Well, put it this way. If the national debt was at $20 trillion, and say interest rates rose to 10%, which is actually pretty low historically because they've been up at around 25% before, so that's pretty low, 10%, which right now they're below 1%, so that's how low they are. So say interest rates rose to 10% and our national debt was $20 trillion, which we're only $3 trillion away, which is about 2.5 years. The interest payments on that debt would be $2 trillion. So $2 trillion on the interest payments out of a $20 trillion national debt, which we're fastly approaching. Well, do the numbers. The federal government takes in approximately $2.3 trillion in tax revenue. So if you take in $2.3 trillion in tax revenue, but the interest on the debt is $2 trillion, that leaves you $300 billion for the rest of the budget. That's not sustainable. I mean, you're talking about basically austerity is what's coming. So, this video is getting long, so I'm going to cut it off now. But basically, that's what's going on. And I'm going to do videos every day. I don't know about on the weekends yet, but I'm thinking about it. So, I'm going to post a link to this article. So, I guess I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye. Have a good day.